The world watched in disbelief when Pope Leo XIV, the first American pope, publicly refused Elon Musk's handshake during their first-ever meeting at the Vatican. It wasn't just an awkward social moment, it was a powerful, unexpected statement that left the world stunned. Cameras captured the moment, and millions of people watched, wondering, why did Pope Leo, a man of peace and humility, refuse the greeting of one of the world's most powerful men? But it was what happened next that would forever change the way we think about power, faith, and true leadership. On a bright and serene morning at the Vatican, light poured through the magnificent stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on the marble floors. Pope Leo XIV, just 5 days into his papacy, knelt alone in prayer. His simple black cassock stood in stark contrast to the golden grandeur that surrounded him in the Vatican's opulent halls. The quiet prayer was a peaceful moment, but an important one. Pope Leo was a man who had lived humbly, even giving up his career as a math prodigy to serve the poorest of the poor in Peru. He was not like other popes before him, known for political maneuvering and rich traditions. He had a unique purpose. As Pope Leo knelt in the silence of the Vatican chapel, an attendant approached cautiously, almost nervously. "Your Holiness, Elon Musk has requested an audience," the attendant said, voice betraying a touch of uncertainty. "He is already en route to Rome. He wishes to personally congratulate you on your election as the first American pope." Pope? Leo looked up from his prayer, his brow furrowing slightly. He had expected many things. A meeting with global leaders, powerful figures, and influencers. But an unannounced visit from Elon Musk was not one of them. He had no prior diplomatic arrangements with the tech mogul, a man whose reputation for disregarding protocol was legendary. "An audience with the President of the United States?" Pope Leo said, his voice a mixture of surprise and thoughtfulness. "He wishes to congratulate me personally?" The attendant nodded. The Pope rose slowly, his face now hardened with quiet determination. "Make the necessary preparations," he instructed, the calm authority in his voice evident. He paused, thinking for a moment. "And when he arrives, there will be specific protocols I insist on following. No deviations." The attendant, though surprised at the Pope's firm stance, nodded respectfully. "Of course, Your Holiness. But if I may, President Musk is known for doing things his way. If there is tension between you, the media will surely notice." Pope Leo's gaze never wavered as he turned to face the attendant. "There are principles, deep ones, that even presidents must respect," he said quietly but firmly. "You will see. Make sure that he understands this. This meeting is not just about politics or power." The attendant left, still uncertain about how the meeting would unfold. Meanwhile, Elon Musk was in the air, en route to the Vatican, reviewing notes about the new pope. Musk was a man who was never one to shy away from challenges, and meeting the first American pope was a challenge he was determined to approach. In his usual confident way, Musk's chief of staff, however, had his doubts. "Sir," he said, nervously flipping through a series of formal documents, "there are some very strict protocols that we must follow when meeting with the Holy Father. These are non-negotiable, and you must adhere to them." Musk looked up with his trademark smile. "Protocols?" he said dismissively. "I'll show respect, but I do it my way. That's the only way I know how." His chief of staff sighed but didn't argue. "Understood, sir. But please, for the sake of your reputation, let's not make waves." The entire situation had become a public spectacle even before Musk's arrival. CNN's breaking news filled the airwaves. Elon Musk makes unprecedented move, heading to the Vatican unannounced to meet Pope Leo XIV just days after his election. The Vatican, traditionally a place of reverence and secrecy, was thrown into chaos. This wasn't just another world leader visiting the Pope. This was Elon Musk, a billionaire, and a man who was never known to follow tradition. Inside the Vatican's sacred halls, tension was running high. Cardinal Dominguez stormed down the hallway, red-faced and clearly agitated. "Impossible," he muttered. "The president cannot simply demand an audience like ordering room service. This is a breach of centuries-old diplomatic protocol." But Pope Leo's secretary remained calm, even a little amused. "His Holiness has already agreed," he said, his voice cool and steady. "We can't undo that decision. If the Pope sees something others don't, so be it." Cardinal Dominguez tried again to make sense of this chaotic situation. "Your Holiness's background is as humble as it is inspiring, but meeting with Elon Musk in such an unorthodox manner, it's simply unprecedented. You're a man of faith, but Musk represents a world of power, greed, and self-interest. He's built empires, you've served the poor, you have no common ground." The Pope turned to face Dominguez, his eyes flashing with a mix of resolve and clarity. "We both understand power," Pope Leo said simply, "but it is not power. That makes a man a leader. Leadership comes from faith, humility, and service." "Are you sure you can handle this, Your Holiness?" Dominguez asked, his voice filled with doubt. The Pope's answer was firm and confident. "I'm counting on it. Today, the world will see something different. Leadership, true leadership, is about service. It's about humility. It's about showing that we as leaders are here to serve others, not for ourselves, but for the greater good." As the motorcade carrying Elon Musk neared the Vatican, the atmosphere inside the walls became even more charged. Pope Leo prepared for the meeting, adjusting his formal red cape and taking a moment to reflect on the importance of this moment. This wasn't just a political meeting. This was a chance to demonstrate that true leadership, the kind that Christ taught, starts with humility. "Mr. Musk is here," one of the attendants reported, stepping into the Pope's chamber. Pope Leo's face remained calm, serene, as always. "Good. No deviations from what I've specified," the Pope said, his voice firm. "He will understand what I am teaching him today." The doors to the Vatican's Grand Hall opened, and in strode Elon Musk, as confident as ever. His gold cufflinks caught the light as he approached. The world had expected him to engage in the usual political formalities, but this was no ordinary meeting. The Pope, seated at the far end of the room, remained still and unmovable, his expression serious. Elon Musk, with his usual charm, walked confidently toward the Pope, hand extended for a handshake, a genuine smile on his face. He was here as a leader, as a figure who commanded attention, who had achieved incredible feats. But as he reached the Pope, the unexpected happened. Pope Leo did not rise. His expression remained unreadable, and his hands stayed clasped in his lap. Musk's extended hand hung in the air for several seconds. An awkward, tense silence. The cameras clicked furiously as the room fell silent. For a moment, it seemed as if time had stopped. Musk's confident smile did not waver, but confusion flashed in his eyes. This was not what he had expected. The Vatican officials, standing nervously in the background, were visibly uncomfortable. Pope Leo, still and unflinching, said nothing. He held eye contact with Musk, as if waiting for something. Then, in the stillness of the room, Pope Leo broke the silence. "Mr. Musk," Pope Leo said slowly, his voice calm, steady, and full of quiet authority. "Welcome to the Vatican. I did not refuse your handshake out of disrespect. I did so because I believe leaders who profess faith should meet in a more meaningful way." Musk stood there, processing the moment. This was unlike any diplomatic encounter he had ever been a part of. The cameras continued flashing, capturing the strange and unexpected scene. The room was still, filled with tension, but Musk could feel something deeper taking shape. The Pope, sensing the confusion, gestured toward a simple wooden table with a basin of water and a towel. He spoke with the kind of authority that made it clear he was not offering just a gesture, but a lesson. "Before we speak as leaders," Pope Leo said gently, "I ask that you join me in a tradition far older than our nation's." Musk, still unsure, looked to his team. What was this? Was it some form of ancient diplomatic gesture, or something deeper? The answer was soon clear as Pope Leo began rolling up his sleeves. This was not about politics, wealth, or power. This was about something far more profound. "This is not a political gesture," Pope Leo continued. "This is a demonstration of leadership. Leadership that begins with service." For the first time in his life, Musk found himself following a leader who was showing him the real meaning of authority, one rooted in humility, in service, and in the Christian principles of love and kindness. As the tension in the Vatican's Grand Hall grew, Pope Leo XIV's refusal of Elon Musk's handshake became a moment frozen in time. The world's eyes were glued to the scene unfolding in the heart of the Catholic Church. What had started as an expected diplomatic meeting between two powerful men had now become an unexpected spectacle, one that no one, not even the Vatican's officials, had predicted. Musk, a man who had built his empire by ignoring convention, now stood before the Pope, his extended hand suspended in the air. The silence in the room was palpable. Cameras clicked frantically as officials shifted uneasily. In their seats, Pope Leo remained seated, his expression calm, his demeanor unwavering, no smile, no polite gesture. Only quiet authority emanating from him as he continued to watch Musk, never breaking eye contact. The Pope's hands were firmly clasped in his lap, a stark contrast to Musk's confident, open posture. For 3 long seconds, no one in the room moved. It was a standoff of sorts, one of power, one of principle. Musk's signature smile didn't fade, but there was a flicker of confusion in his eyes. This was not what he had prepared for. He had met world leaders, dignitaries, and influencers, yet no one had ever responded to him like this. No one had ever refused him in such a direct and unwavering manner. It was in that moment that the world understood. This wasn't about a mere greeting. It was a symbolic refusal, one meant to send a much deeper message. It wasn't about dismissing Elon Musk personally. Instead, Pope Leo had set the stage for something far more meaningful, something rooted in faith, service, and humility, qualities that Musk himself had never fully embraced, not in this context. But it was clear now. This moment wasn't about any one person. It was about leadership, responsibility, and a return to foundational values that transcended power and wealth. Musk, still unsure of how to respond, slowly lowered his hand. His posture, which had been full of confidence moments earlier, softened. The room had gone from tense silence to a buzzing murmur as the American delegation, Vatican officials, and media caught their breath. The moment was unprecedented, and yet there was a strange sense of reverence that hung in the air. Just as the tension began to feel unbearable, Pope Leo, never breaking eye contact, finally spoke, his voice steady and calm, though filled with authority. "Mr. Musk," he said, "welcome to the Vatican. I did not refuse your handshake out of disrespect. I wanted to show you that true leadership is more than just ceremony, more than just power, more than appearances. Leadership begins with service." For a moment, the weight of the words hung in the air, settling around everyone present. It wasn't what anyone expected, and it certainly wasn't what the media had prepared for. There was no grand political gesture, no formal exchange of pleasantries. Instead, Pope Leo had delivered a lesson in humility, in leadership, and in the Christian values that he had lived by. Musk, still processing the Pope's words, took a slow, deep breath. It was clear to him that this meeting was unlike any other. He had faced conflicts, confrontations, and challenges throughout his career, but nothing had prepared him for this. The very essence of his being, the power he held, the wealth he had accumulated, and the control he exercised were not the values Pope Leo was focusing on. It was humility, faith, and service that mattered here. The Pope gestured to a small, unassuming wooden table set with a basin of water and a white towel. There was no grand setup, no elaborate ceremony, just a simple invitation. Before we speak as world leaders, before we engage in any political discourse, I ask that you join me in a tradition far older than our nations, Pope Leo said, his voice measured yet inviting. Musk stood still, unsure of what to do. His mind raced as he glanced at his team and the Vatican officials. A sense of confusion filled the room. This wasn't the formal meeting that Musk had anticipated. The protocols of diplomacy, the customary handshake, all of it had been set aside for something entirely different. Pope Leo, ever composed, rolled up his sleeves, preparing to wash his hands. The simplicity of the gesture stunned Musk. This was not the grand political display of power that he was accustomed to. This was something more profound, a display of leadership that did not come from domination or authority, but from service. It was a teaching moment, a living lesson in the core of Christian faith and humility. I invite you to join me in this act of leadership, Pope Leo continued, his tone unwavering. Before we engage in anything else, we must first recognize that leadership begins with serving others, not ourselves. Musk, after a moment of hesitation, stepped forward. This was not something he had expected, but there was something in Pope Leo's presence that commanded respect. The room was silent, save for the sound of water splashing gently into the basin as Pope Leo dipped his hands into it, then turned to Musk. Musk, still processing everything, took the towel from Pope Leo's hand and carefully dried the Pope's hands. The act, so simple, was deeply profound. It was the physical embodiment of the Pope's message. True leadership does not come from commanding, but from humbling oneself in service to others. The moment was captured in real time by photographers and cameras from around the world. The image of Pope Leo and Elon Musk standing together, washing each other's hands, was a symbol of humility and leadership that no one had anticipated. It was not a diplomatic handshake, nor a staged photo op. It was an authentic act of service, one that demonstrated the real strength of leadership. The media buzzed with excitement, trying to process what had just happened. News reports were already attempting to spin the story. Pope snubs Musk's handshake was the headline from some outlets. Others were scrambling to understand the significance of this moment, but the truth, hidden beneath the surface of their rushed analyses, was something far deeper. Musk and Pope Leo, side by side, represented two completely different worlds, one of power and wealth, the other of faith and service. But in that moment, they found common ground. The meeting wasn't about power or protocol. It was about a deeper understanding of leadership. Leadership that comes from humility, that recognizes service as the greatest strength, and that puts faith before self-interest. Pope Leo looked up at Musk, his eyes calm and filled with the weight of what he had just taught him. True leadership, Pope Leo said softly, isn't about wielding power over others. It is about serving them, lifting them up, and guiding them with compassion and humility. Musk stood still for a moment as the weight of the Pope's words sank in. For a man who had built an empire on his own terms, who had faced challenges and conflicts head-on, this was a completely new perspective on leadership. There was no doubt in Musk's mind now. This was something he would carry with him. The world continued to watch as Pope Leo and Musk exchanged these quiet words of wisdom, unseen by the public. They may not have agreed on everything, but the lesson of humility, service, and faith transcended politics. Musk had come to the Vatican expecting to discuss power, but what he left with was something far more valuable, a lesson in what true leadership really means. As the meeting continued, the conversation shifted from the ceremonial to the deeply personal. Pope Leo's humility and strength had left an undeniable impression on Musk. And as the press continued to speculate, one thing was clear. The world had just witnessed something that could change the way we view leadership forever. As the moment settled, Pope Leo and Elon Musk stood in a quiet understanding, both having shared something rare, a moment of genuine humility. The world outside the Vatican buzzed with confusion and speculation as cameras captured every moment. But inside, something much more profound was unfolding. There was no grand statement, no dramatic showdown, just two leaders, each from vastly different worlds, engaged in a quiet, meaningful act. Musk, still processing everything that had happened, glanced at the Pope. The words of wisdom spoken earlier reverberated in his mind. Leadership begins with service. In that small, unassuming room, Musk began to see the weight of those words, something that the world's headlines had entirely missed in their rush to capture the sensational moment. After the simple yet powerful act of hand-washing, Pope Leo turned to Musk and said, "I wanted you to see that leadership is not about dominance or being seen. It is about being present for those you serve. Power without humility is just control." Musk, still quiet, nodded slowly, understanding now that there was more to leadership than simply achieving success or amassing wealth. This encounter was teaching him something deeper, that true strength came not from authority, but from the willingness to serve others. The press, unaware of the deeper conversation unfolding, had already started to adjust their narratives. The headlines began to shift as some reporters caught on to the true message of the meeting. Pope Leo and Musk show a new kind of leadership began to make its way across networks. The story was no longer about a rejection, but about a lesson in humility, in faith, and in the real meaning of service. In that quiet room, with nothing but the faint sound of the basin filling with water, Pope Leo had imparted a timeless lesson, one that transcended political differences, power struggles, and media spectacle. It was a lesson that Elon Musk would not soon forget, and one that, in time, would change how many people saw both of these powerful men. As the meeting came to a close, the room filled with a sense of quiet reverence. The press, still bustling, outside, awaited the moment when Pope Leo and Elon Musk would step back into the public eye. But inside the Vatican, something far more meaningful had occurred than anyone had anticipated. What had begun as a diplomatic encounter between two of the world's most powerful figures had turned into an extraordinary lesson in leadership, humility, and faith. Pope Leo, his face serene and composed, turned to Musk one final time. "I trust you understand now," he said softly. His eyes filled with the kind of wisdom that only years of devotion could bring. Leadership is not about seeking power for oneself. It is about using whatever influence you have to serve others, to lift them up, and to guide them towards something greater than themselves. Musk, still processing the impact of everything that had transpired, nodded slowly. The world expected conflict, but instead, they had witnessed an exchange of ideas that transcended politics. In that moment, Elon Musk was learning something that went beyond business deals or scientific achievements. He was discovering the profound weight of faith in action, the true meaning of leadership that came from service, not self-interest. As the two men stood in the Vatican